This is Senate Appropriations, and we're back on the VA. We did vote the bill out, but like is often the case, there's some things that kind of need to be brought back, or things that we did not deal with in the VA. So we're going to be talking about two items. One is emergency housing. We did not agree to simply open up adverse weather and change that policy. But on the other hand, I think as we were having discussion and some need to crosswalk what happens in regular GA outside of adverse weather, because adverse weather is only one door into the GA eligibility, and it's a very broad door. And I think we were obviously in trying to look at how we were having competition for the money available, didn't want to simply maintain the open eligibility that comes with adverse weather. On the other hand, there is, I think, concern that there would be people that are subject to the regular GA limitation, time limit on benefits, and what that might look like. And so, in light of looking back and having a bit more time and getting some people here to testify, we've asked Miranda Gray, I think you're going to, or is it Shayla Livingston, or both of you who want to come up to sort of walk us through that we come up with something that is in between a total extension of adverse weather, as opposed to not trying to do some accommodation with those households that are eligible under GA emergency rules. And that gets into the 28 day and 84 days. So we asked you to kind of help us sort out. I know that the people, some people would like to simply maintain, obviously that was the house view, but what we would have maybe here to address the concerns that we wanted to reconsider relative to people that, particularly families with children, people, seniors, people with disabilities, and so forth, the vulnerable population. So we appreciate your coming today, and if you could help us sort this out. We know that simply shutting down or keeping open adverse weather brought a price tag of 3.2 million in that vicinity. But if we were to do something that is more targeted to the people that fall into that vulnerable definition, what would we be talking about in terms of money? And I will remind the committee that there are a couple of areas that we have pulled out, but we are emergency relief for nursing homes. We restored back to the 17. The House had found money from that. The other area where the House had gathered money was setting the $75, which we got testimony yesterday that that may have may, or it's projected to have a significant increase in terms of the availability of rooms to begin with, which are already inadequate and even under the current reimbursement. So the question becomes one of if we were to do a policy, just suspend the time limits for that vulnerable group, what would we be talking about? So that's kind of what we wanted you to help us with.
Well, thank you. For the record, my name is Maureen Graham, the Deputy Commissioner of the Economic Services Division. I appreciate you having me in today. I did want to start with just making sure that we're all clear. We had provided some language, and that is what's before you, but that was on the House bill. And what I'm prepared to speak to today is what is in your calendar. So the VA language in the calendar. Though we don't have to focus on that, but it might be a helpful reference to what we were thinking. We have reviewed the language, but are still going through it with our legal staff to make sure that there's nothing else that we might want to suggest.
Whose language is this?
That was it is economic services thoughts in the red on the house on the AA. So, so that's just a reference for you, but what I'm prepared to share with you today is on the language that is in your Senate calendar.
What's in our Senate calendar? Just continue to use current policy on that adverse weather.
Yeah, and so if I may,
So I'm not sure I'm understanding, the reference to what's in our,
so the section 86.
okay.
Yeah. The temporary emergency housing.
It's on page 44, if you've got today's agenda. Okay,
So and they should have a few very specific things and then a couple of technical changes. So I'd like to think we agree with limiting the population. However, we disagree with the new exception that is in section D. This language is
only
not
$80?
no, specifically around the exception.
Oh,
So
uh-huh,
little d, okay. Sorry, tell me if I need to be more specific, I'm happy to.
no,
Well, the language is non-specific, not applicable, and removes any motivation for the hotels to comply with the cap. And does not describe the specific parameters under which it would be used. When we do this type of thing, and which I have been doing, myself and the commissioner, of making exceptions, of having that ability to make exceptions, it is not equitable. It depends on if the person is connected to an applicant, if they get connected into legal aid, or if they have no connection, then I probably never knew that they had an exception request. So we would like for this to be very clear and concise as
well,
possible.
we struggled with this because, the concern was the language you shall not pay more. And the concern that we were getting was there might be, times when the circumstances would warrant. Now, I know that the commissioner has always had authority to make exceptions. And so, we were just trying to, but I'm not sure you can make exceptions to the statute if the statute says you shall not pay more than, which was the language on the House version.
Right, and I think the exceptions means that currently, we're not making any exceptions on prices that was a negotiation within each individual motel. But this reads as we're making exceptions. I'm sorry, looking.
Well, if you can help us with what you would recommend, but you can understand what we're trying to do, and that is not have you violate the law, so to speak, to make an exception on on a motel room that might cost $82, not 75, for example. So that's where, shall not pay is, that's kind of a definitive statement to have it in the law. I mean, I realize it's session law, but it's still law.
May I come?
Yes.
So Sheila Livingston, Policy Director for the Agency of Human Services. Agree. One of the next comments that we have is on section F. I believe, thank you, 2 or 3. And that would be to strike number 3 under section F, which caps the agreements that we can make with hotels. So one of the really big points and purposes here, aside from the obvious need to cap the rate for expenditure and good governance purposes, is to move this model more toward a shelter model of care.
Mhm.
And so one of the big goals in being able to negotiate leases and negotiate contracts and work with hotels is to try to move that to a place where there are more services, where maybe we say, okay, this hotel we are using 80% of your rooms, we'd really like to use all of your rooms and not have you placing other people that are not ESD people here. Whatever those other pieces are that are going to make it safer for clients, better compliance to active services, more like the shelter system that we have in the community, which is the standard that we would like to move toward. In order to do that, I think, and also get at what you are suggesting, Chair, we would look at striking that section 3 so that we can incentivize that behavior financially. So that would say, if all you're going to do is give people room keys and check them in and out, then you never will get more than $80 a day. We're not gonna make exceptions to that. But if you're gonna work with us and you're gonna come up with ways to support these clients and acknowledge that you are not part of our social service system of care in the state of Vermont, then we can negotiate that contractually through lease agreements and potentially reimburse.
So you would like to get rid of any reference in terms of the money relative to negotiating one of these lease agreements? Our thought was, if you're assuring for a year that you've got the rooms that are gonna be occupied, there's a certain benefit or
Sure.
assurance that comes from that. That I know that there was a suggestion that that should pay more. We weren't quite sure how that might work, but this gives you some latitude as long as we don't have that language then.
Right,
With your
and I think it could get at both of your points, yes.
So Senator
So you're suggesting we just strike
3,
at 3.
yeah.
Yeah. But we would also then, we would definitely also then do to strike that under, right?
Above that, where the says.
Give us 1 second, where you put.
And
Under D, thank you,
on page
the last sentence in D.
But I was under the impression that you wanted a price in there from us so that there wouldn't be any more of this $147 a night deal. That if we had a lower figure in there, and we raised it to 80, that,
section D, yeah.
that you would have a bargaining chip.
We definitely want, I want to be really clear, Senator, we definitely want to keep that room cap in section D. That $80 per room in section D, we want to keep that section, it's just that very last part of the sentence around exceptions that we want to get rid of. You are absolutely right.
Well, then,
So 3, then you don't wanna get rid of.
3 they want to get rid of and
That's
just
just-
negotiate a long-term lease.
It's also above that in D.
D.
So
Bottom of page 44, look on the bottom of page 44, that's what they're referring to. There's a
Yeah,
reference
say
to,
it.
yeah,
So.
yes, oh, wait a minute, you had your hand up first and then you're next. Then,
I think I'm fine, but I might have.
So what, you wanna get rid of that language and exception, but you wanna be able to, in the negotiation, overall negotiation, create exceptions later, maybe.
It's a great point. So we do not want the commissioner and deputy commissioner making individual person level negotiations on room rates with
So-
hotels,
So
because that puts them in a horrible situation.
I'll just speak for myself and I think there was a few others around the table that shared the concern. If we're down to households and there's 680 of them and they're the hardest to serve, you at times are gonna have people that have conditions. Maybe you're a family with multi-members and you might need a room or more than one room or something. But we wanted to make sure that there was some ability in this someplace to address those hard to serve people and be able to move them along. And when we got the stuff and we saw a single number cap, we're like, well, how would the department be able to deal with that? So I think what you're saying is you're offering us, we wanna do it through contracts, we don't wanna do it on an individual
they're
basis.
gonna have to do it on an individual basis sometime. If you've got a family that a house burned down, well, maybe Red Cross will help, but sometimes that money is available and you need to pay $100 because they don't have a roof. Or, you can think of emergency situations. The question becomes one of, are we actually precluding your ability to make, a payment higher than what is saying you shall not do. And that's the concern, that there might be times, absolutely, we want you to negotiate this. We want to make the money go. We know that we've been spending millions and millions of dollars. But the concern is that you have, this preempts even your decision, your exception authority. As I would read it, you shall not reimburse. So that's that's kind of our concern
Right.
is, how, and I realize the minute you attempt to give some leeway, you know, how open the door, and I understand your concern, under, I don't know, extraordinary circumstances or whatever, if there's some language, but it's much easier to say black or white, you're in, you're out. It's $80, and if it's $80 and 50 cents, you're out. I mean, that's really the dilemma here. If you can't allow any ability to, unless we pay it and then you try to get some charitable, like the, I don't know, Salvation Army or something to supplement. So I think that's one of the.
So I wanna separate two concerns. One is in Miranda's technical corrections section, which I do wanna make sure we get to. We do need to change the language from household to room.
Yeah,
The cap is by room, because some households do need more than one room. So that gets at your concerns, Senator, of the actual, like, what do you do with a big sample, for example. So that's an important technical change we would request. I think, yes, I hear your dilemma loud and clear. We are turning away families and households today. And so Miranda is in that seat doing that, and it is hard, unpleasant, not nice work when that is the case. So I think we hear that and we know that. The problem with the language as it stands right now is if that's a private business looking at that language, they're like, great, so I'll just play hardball and I'll rent you my 100 rooms. 150? And what does she do? Does she say no? What do you want her to do? It's really untenable space for
Well,
us. And it's hard, and I hear that, but I don't think that's I think if you give us that out in the contracting and the leasing, we can really push for those models in that space. And I mean, in terms of the households who are harder to house because of their past behaviors and their past, sort of the folks who end up on some of the no-fly lists. That is something that we run into already today.
Right, so
Not always solved with
doesn't
more
any
money.
fault of yours or ours. I mean, if they're bad actors, they created their own. I was always told you create your own bed, you're gonna sleep in. So
well, we do.
I don't know what
we
there
do know
is.
that, people have lost their rooms and there's a provision anywhere. So what you're asking for is get rid of that whole last part unless the commissioner of BCS issues an exception. Is that what you're asking? And the, that it's no more than 80 a day per household to, I wouldn't think that you would have a problem if they're renting to a utility crew for $70, that we don't pay more than they charge for other populations or not. That was something that Senator Sears mentioned that.
We're good with that language, yeah.
Okay, so that's not the issue.
No.
It's, the language after homelessness.
You got it. And then we would love to change in that same paragraph, $80 a day per room, not per household, so that they're able to rent to a family more than one room.
Wait, so where does the sentence end then?
It's, in D, it's the third line, $80 per day, a day per room, not per
To
household.
shelter a household experienced in homelessness, period there?
Yeah,
So we're excluding the exception.
that's what they're asking.
That's what we're,
And you would just change household to room within the sentence would make sense. To shelter a room.
No, to shelter a household.
To shelter a house.
Add
So we're only changing $80 a day per room
to shelter.
to shelter a household. Because if you've got 4 children or something, you are gonna have to have more than one. Um,
We do just, while we're on technical corrections, I wanna like, make sure we. You know, these are.
And strike out 3.
but that's on page 45, yes, they felt it not to specify, let them negotiate the best lease that they can and not put in constraints that come with it. Okay.
And then we'd like to add to D for services rendered. We just want to make sure that we're able to honor any stay that happens after March 1st would be this price. But if we get an invoice for a stay that happened in February, we would be honoring the agreement at that time, whatever the motel rate was at that time.
We can give that, these changes to
Exactly.
JFO.
So read what you would like, indeed, beginning on March 1st.
For services rendered.
Beginning on March 1st.
Oh. Okay, so if you got the bill for February stay, you don't want to be bound by a subsequent change. Okay, so it's not to have a retroactive potential.
And then for E1. Like to strike and after AHS and add may work with.
That's on that printout that you have, with the language the same as the house. That's just to not specifically make the arrangement have to be between the shelter and the hotel, if that's not the way it all ends up.
You're saying F1?
E1,
E1.
I'm hearing a voice. I don't know what's,
F1 in the calendar, I believe.
what?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
One.
sorry, it's F1, guys, I love this.
So,
I thought it's F1.
It is, you're right,
All
right, as usual.
Oh, thank you. That's what I thought. All right, so where the, if you're working off the addendum today, we're on page 45. And it's F1 prior to June 1st. The AHS may work with a shelter to enter into a full facility lease or sales agreement with a hotel or motel provider. In other words, the Agency of Human Services is gonna buy a motel?
No.
Well, a sales agreement, it says you may
Lease or sales.
enter into a sales agreement with a hotel.
Lease or sales.
No, that's not. Normally, AHS is not in the business of acquiring real property. That's what I'm saying.
Totally, and we do not want to get into that business. So I'm sorry, I'm getting confused with the different versions.
The changes that you're discussing even were made in F1.
Sorry, ignore us.
So we want to take out sales and just leave lease.
Looks like JFO made those changes, we apologize.
Well,
It's not that we would ever buy or lease a hotel chair, it's that we would want to be able to work with the housing provider to maybe do a lease or purchase. And then with the shelter provider to provide those services, we would want to potentially be able to do that together or separately with both those entities and have flexibility in that construct. But JFO made those changes in this version, I apologize, I didn't do that.
all right, so,
Still lease or sale.
well, but it doesn't mean that
Doesn't have to
it
be.
doesn't have to be AHS. They're working with their partner. So it could be Champlain Housing, it could be Rural Edge, it could be the HCB, for example. So it's, you're working in partnership with a around either a lease. If it's a lease, you're probably dealing with it, but if you're talking about the acquisition of and the purchase of property, you would be working with another entity, another housing provider.
So for example, a shelter provider might lease the hotel. A houser might purchase the hotel and then run it like Harbor Place. So Champlain Housing Trust runs Harbor Place as a hotel, but it is not. It is a nonprofit hotel. It is working with providing services. So it is a much different model than your private
I
owners.
think they made the news last week.
Was it good or bad?
Well, it wasn't very good,
Oh,
I wouldn't say.
I've got a different article then.
Yeah, I can't answer that. Sorry.
And the other question, and actually this is still in here, and I raised it before, and I don't know if I got the answer. And that is the OEO actually has shelter standards.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure, are they, and so, I just, wanted to make sure that that was, the right reference. So you want to change F1?
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
apologize.
You have
That
to-
was already taken care of.
Okay, well, we'll declare a victory on that one. What else do you have?
You requested the amount it would cost.
If we suspended the day limitation on days until the end of the bid cycle.
So that would be $3.1 million over the governor's recommended BAA.
3.1,
And that's assuming the $80 per night cap.
And can you just explain how you came up with that? Is that just taking the existing population and saying, assuming they're all gonna be there? What's the math behind that?
Yeah, so we have for those that have eligibility, categorical eligibility, so assuming that they would stay in. And then also factoring in that we know that we would have additional households who meet that eligibility, but with also a room cap. We know that we only have so many rooms available to us. That is how.
Assuming all the rooms available.
We've been assuming 1,500 rooms as the cap.
okay, so we're basically back to the 3.2.
Yeah, but if we don't ever change any of the rules, this is gonna go on forever. You know,
Until we get temporary shelter capacity, that's our dilemma. And I remember having a conversation with the Commissioner of Finance and Management a year ago, saying we have got to really think about how we build that alternative capacity to motels.
yeah, but the housing that we're building, these people aren't gonna ever be able to afford to live in them. I mean,
Well, that's
it's,
why you're getting into VHIP and subsidized housing and vouchers.
well, we don't build many subsidized housing program. I mean, that's been gone for years.
The last few years, we put a lot of millions of dollars into trying to do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think what, 340 million or something like that into housing.
yeah,
I don't know.
and how many homeless people have we been able to move into that 300 and X millions of dollars? That you could count them on your.
Well, we know that we've moved quite a few. The commissioner gave us testimony. The big problem is you can put the financing out there, but an apartment takes time to permit and get built. And so there's stuff in the pipeline, but it doesn't come on quickly. Now, I suppose some of the temporary units you're talking about, for example, the trailers and so forth, would be much faster to have online than obviously constructing a new building, which takes some time, or remodeling something. Okay, so to suspend those timeframes adds a lot of cost.
During good weather. I mean, next fall, you may need that money to take care of into the winter months. you spend it all in the summer months, what are you gonna do next fall when snow comes?
I frankly, that is gonna be a big question, what happens in 25? Because we have been able with the federal money to do this, you're absolutely right, and then the extent to which we continue to, have the impact on other areas of funding for all of the other governmental services. And some of them are pretty obvious, reach up is right up there, I mean, in terms of the benefits paid, or what we're doing with AADD. I mean, those are all benefit programs that help, very low income Vermonters, and this is an expenditure that once we make it, it just diminishes the capacity to make progress on some of those other benefit areas. So, okay, so
The other thing that should be in this housing bill is if you're an able-bodied person, you should have to have a job of doing something. So to qualify, one of the qualifiers for an able body would be to do public service, to go do some type of work rather than just sit home and maybe, I don't know, read or watch TV or whatever they do, but to get these people back into the mainstream.
well, I need to be clear. What adverse weather does is allow open eligibility. So
Yeah.
I think you're talking about getting back to like the food stamp rule, single able bodied. But obviously with the 3.1 million versus the 3.2 for what we were getting for what the House did, we're talking about people that meet the definition of vulnerable. So we're talking about women with, families with children, we're talking about people with disabilities, or we're talking about someone who is elderly. We're not,
Totally.
even with what we're talking about here, it was how much would it cost to suspend that time limit for that group of vulnerables, and let adverse weather door close for the individuals that you're concerned about.
The folks that you just talked about should be taken care of, but able-bodied people, they should be getting retrained or something to start earning money to pay their own way. And
So I think I think that's exactly what we're talking about, is not extending the how, and part of it is simply because we've heard no ability to prioritize, and so there are times in which, someone who's single and 30 years old or 25 might get a motel room, and somebody that would be much more at risk is not, there just isn't any place to house. So, okay, what else do you have for
Can
comments?
I ask just a mundane question on number 3?
We struck it, if we.
Number 3 is gone.
Mhm.
That's what I was.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
I just had a clarification about the vulnerable population. So right now, they're being turned away sometimes now.
They're eligible, but that housing is definitely is available.
And it's not available because the hotels, like you had an example where they're saying, we'll give you 200 or 220 rooms. Is it a variety of reasons why there's not rooms, or is it like hotel owners or state saying we're only gonna rent so many rooms, or do you have is there an easy way to describe why we're turning them away now, or is it just 101 reasons?
It's a variety of reasons. Sometimes we do have some hotels that we have to have caps at. We have experienced when they're at full capacity and what that does to the community, the municipalities that need to support. And so have, worked closely with those towns to ensure that we have what is manageable.
Sometimes like a negotiated cap with the town, like.
With the town, yeah. And then we also have some areas of the state where we just don't have a lot of hotels that work with us. Or there's just not a lot of hotels in general, so trying to keep people in their community is a challenge. There as well, and then we did lose, some providers, motels in the summer to the flood. So that was another area that we had lost capacity, and then there's just some hotels who have decided that they no longer wanted, to work with economic services this summer and into the fall. So there is a variety.
Okay, and this came up yesterday, I think Senator started this question. Are there some hotels that have both economic services tenants and also just regular people that are just renting a room for the night because they're driving through or whatever?
They do, yes, they serve the traveling public.
So several of them do both.
Yeah, I mean, we work with around 70 motels in the state, so there is a variety.
Yeah, the majority of them do both.
I don't know if I want to say the majority, but that would be backtracking myself.
And what we had before the adverse weather, this group of GA normal eligibles were subject and you were applying the limit on the nuggets of the days of being authorized,
Yeah,
the time limitations.
yeah, so July 1st, anyone who wasn't a member of the cohort then was subject to regular GA rules that we have been administering pre-pandemic.
And if we change that, that's the 3.2 million taken from March.
3.1.
3.1 from March 15th to June 30th.
I think it was March 1st. So I wanted
Is it March 1st?
So I just thought the weather ended at March 1st.
No, but this goes through June.
Well,
Sorry, you're probably correct. I'm conflating when the motel rate would be in effect, and then you're correct. Our adverse weather conditions do go through March 15th. And then it reverts back to night, so it's dependent on weather.
we'll have to have some conversations, obviously, this is a fairly significant, additional cost, yes, it can be.
This is a question for you or anybody that, so was that, how was the House position on population?
They just kept the adverse weather and no time limit, I believe.
With 2.5 to a company,
We're told it was 3.2.
not the number they sent us anyway.
I think they put in, a total of 5.
Total of 5 and it was 2.5 and 2.5, wasn't it?
Well, supposedly the chair, but what we got from the agency was the over 3 million, not the 2.5. I don't know where they got the 2.5. To be honest, maybe there's been some revision to the estimated cost, or maybe they didn't testify, sort of like with the extraordinary relief for nursing homes, where we just saw a $4 million, $3 million reduction.
So the construct was different how they get to it, but the impact on the people is the same. As far as they, the vulnerable population can stay. Till
No,
June.
what they did was adverse weather, which means everybody can come in.
Oh, right.
So you're not limiting it to the households that meet the vulnerable definition. So it could be, as I said, Grady needs a room for the night.
Right.
He could, if he didn't have any money and didn't have a house, he could come in. So the adverse weather opens up the eligibility beyond the vulnerable.
And it seems like that would be a lot more expensive than the 3.1.
Well,
But maybe
Oh,
they
well,
just
isn't that
pop
bad?
up against the 1,500 rooms that are available, so it doesn't matter.
It must mean that you're not doing very many people who don't fit the vulnerable category. If we
Should be going.
say 3.2, by totally getting rid of keeping the adverse weather and the rules the way they are. And what you're saying is, if we were to put that, just suspend the, application of the time limits, only generates, and would cost 3.1. And not 100,000 isn't very much difference. That's why I'm wondering, you must not be, providing housing for very many non-vulnerables.
That's accurate, Madam Chair, that most people that we are having right now through adverse weather are meeting a category.
But you're also not closing the door. So they're still assuming a cap of 1,500 rooms. So it's not like the cohort, right, theoretically continued to shrink. But that's not what is proposed in either the House or the Senate, or this different version of Senate language being contemplated. It
Well-
would not be a finite population shrinking.
Well, there
People would
always
still
still people
come in.
coming in and having emergencies. It's not a closed group like you've got with a June 30th cohort.
Exactly, so that's why you're not seeing that really big difference, because you're gonna exit a bunch of people who are under the OC definition, non-vulnerable. But because the GA rules are still in effect, because people can still come in and you're still raising the day limit, you'll just bump up against that room
But
ceiling
the
again.
new
pretty
people that are
quickly.
coming in are already, assumed a cost of 28 or 84 days. So it's just, what is that, incremental group that you're adding here? Or keeping on under this scenario. Do you understand what I'm
Can
saying?
I hand it to a friend?
Rich Donahue, CFO for AHS. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Shayla, what we're trying to describe is the finite capacity available for hotel rooms, whether, regardless of the population that may be eligible under standards in place at any given point in time, we can only house so many folks in hotels, even at capacity.
I guess what you're saying is the vulnerable population exceeds the finite capacity.
That's exactly,
Yeah, I find.
And even with the churn that you're describing, which does exist outside of the June cohort, pardon my description of that population, but
Well,
just to be clear.
Okay, Senator Virgil.
Do you know how many in the current letter under the adverse weather are not, would fit that vulnerable definition?
Gotta be very few, it's only 100,000.
I don't off the top of my head, but I.
Is it like a dozen or is it like 100 or you don't reach that one?
It's more than a dozen.
But
But less than 500.
Yeah, we only have around 800 households under our percent.
Senators,
I thought earlier in a different discussion, we talked about the vulnerable people. And I think it was last,
did somebody tell me why we're getting that?
I assume
They take Zoom testimony at high volume deadlines. Joe, like you to ask them to.
Well, it seems very loud if I'm hearing it playing against the stacked wall.
Yeah,
And I thought we changed it so that, I know, I remember you talking about how the single person could run like heck and get a motel room. And then mom and the kids who were vulnerable would come and there wouldn't be any room
Well, that can
for them.
happen with adverse weather because it opens the eligibility to them.
So,
Which is only for a fixed period of time from November to March 15th.
and I thought we addressed that back then, but if we haven't, I mean, that's a crew that I don't think should be held. The vulnerable people, there's no problem with that. But these people that just go from motel to motel to motel or stay in the same one for months that don't work, I mean, those people during the summer months, we shouldn't be spending that money. We should be keeping it for next fall when somebody's gonna need a truckload of money again for families that are really desperate.
You know,
Isn't it?
I guess we're gonna have to let this down. If we were to come and say, well, we'll get rid of or suspend the time limit. Then we are actually we're creating more of a demand for spending because, as you said, in the summer last year and in the fall, we were, saying this is an emergency program and these are the limits on the benefits. if we suspend that beyond, say, March, or even if we went to April 15th. At some point, unless we keep redoing and renewing, and until we get a shelter capacity, we're kind of in this, horrible situation, I guess. But what you're saying is, based on what we did in Act 81 last year, we were saying to the categorically eligible GA people, these are the time limits on the benefit, and we honor those, or we administered those time limits, and those families were treated in this way. So what we're in essence doing is backing away from the policy that we had in place after June 30th last year. To be clear in my own mind.
Yes, that's accurate.
Other questions? So, I guess some people would say we're just kicking the can down the road at a cost of $3 million.
Enhancing, encouraging.
I don't, at some point, if it's, depending on what funding looks like in 25, and what we have for shelter capacity brought online and how quickly we bring it on, we are, in a situation where we're gonna be pulling money from, I don't know, other benefit programs. And that's not a very desirable thing to do, because there's only so much money that we have to work with, and, if you take it away from Medicaid, then you're reducing healthcare benefits for another group of Vermonters, or if we take it away from, and certainly childcare is not a very good, really, huh?
We
So-
are took 2 million.
We'll have
So,
more people.
So that really is the difficult discussion that we're having right now, and that is, do we keep what we did yesterday and simply say, we're gonna keep our current policies in place. We'll commit to the June cohort, what we committed to do through June. I don't know what we're gonna do in June. And, hopefully there'll be a plan. And then you either sort of redefine what was only funded as an emergency program into a long-term benefit program. And if you do that, where, our dilemma is where the money's gonna come from. And out of where we spend money in this budget, who would end up paying? Who would end up, if you say we're gonna do this level of spending here, then who you move it from and how they would be impacted is not very attractive either. That's the challenge. I mean, people can look at one particular need and say, that's, that's what I'm looking at, but everything, and now that we don't have all that federal money to underwrite this, and we're back to our normal revenue stream. This is sort of having to reset, policies and the extent to which we would like to do something versus what we have the resources to do, and ultimately who's gonna pay. And in human services, you see the populations that are gonna be most vulnerable. You see it now with how paltry our reach-out benefits are. So that's the Sophie's choice here before this committee.
I do wanna also just emphasize the sort of the capacity and where you set capacity in this system, and the length of time and the eligibility, or all of these different pieces. When you look at them in isolation, they are really very difficult decisions. And I think what you're getting at, Chair, is the thing that DCF and ACCD have really been trying to communicate to your colleagues in a variety of committees. And that is the intense and critical and immediate need to focus on preventing homelessness from happening to begin with and allowing for the building that is needed for people to go into permanent housing. We don't have a number for you. Oh, if you gave us this much money and we had 3,000 hotel rooms, then we would have enough. There's not an enough number that we know about. And so I think when you're thinking about how we're gonna solve the problem, is again, a plea to really think about preventing these households, preventing these families from getting there to begin with, and then desperate need we have in the state to build more housing that is affordable. To make sure that folks don't end up here to begin with. I mean, we are, essentially Miranda is running the emergency department in this system. And you're asking her to solve her disease.
Yeah, well, we understand, that dilemma, and then the question is the extent to which, certainly, we know that there are times when what we're able to appropriate does not fully meet the need. And we can't ignore that reality. I mean, adult days are an example where people are waiting, and these are vulnerable people, nursing home level of care.
Yeah.
So those are all, if you say, well, our whole priority is, just this particular need of Vermonters, that means the needs of other Vermonters, get compromised. And for what period of time?
But you take a lot of our senior citizens, spent their whole life working for small money, end up in a nursing home. And the nursing homes are closing because we can't help them enough to keep them open. And these people actually work and pay their way and get thrown out of the nurse or move 100 miles away to a different nursing home. And then the family can't go see them, but maybe once every other week or something. Now that's really cool.
Well, I think we're dealing with what is a national phenomenon. You look at what's happening in so many of the cities and so forth. This is, the number of unhoused is certainly not unique to Vermont. That's the other thing. And what it would take to fully say, we don't want anyone unhoused, is an enormous commitment of funding. And that's when we had the federal money, that was a very different environment and discussion. So, yes, I know you have to leave.
I have to go. This is not a good time for me to leave, but I do need to leave. I apologize for that. Thank you.
So. And this is your language here, if we were to do something here.
That was from the house.
So this is a little tricky.
Yeah, sure.
Can we, the committee would allow us to work with JFO on a tech markup of what is in your calendar, so that we don't confuse ourselves or you more with that version.
But we have not made any decisions relative to
Understand? Yeah.
adverse weather policy and whether we're prepared to change that, knowing what the implications are and the way in which that other families experience that after June 30th of this year. I understand.
I was thinking more of the, both the technical and the requests we have, we could show you in track changes version, what that would look like.
All right, well, obviously, anything we would do would have to be an amendment to what we passed up. I mean, we wanted to get the document out last night, so we have some the time. Simply that we can get it moving on the Senate floor. Okay. Do people want to take a brief break? I think this is a fairly significant discussion in terms of well, fiscal implication. I mean, we can I don't, we're gonna take, a break. We've gotta come back, as we have people from the education agency coming in at 3. So.
Next up,